我们思慧申请冲刺季系列讲座的第3期。今天呢，我们的这个主题呢是如何激发孩子的潜能，并最终呢帮助他们进入到顶级名校。今天我们的嘉宾呢是 Frank Lin。Frank Lin 呢，他本身目前呢是在罗德岛的一家顶尖的私立大学担任客座教授，同时呢，他也有自己的这个升学咨询公司哈。同时呢，他也是这个沃顿商学院的 MBA。在这一个如何把孩子送入这个顶级的商校方面哈，他是非常有发言权的。今天呢，我们这个讲座呢，不会说直接的讨论如何进行升学的1步、2步、3步，我们呢也是希望能提供给家长呢一个不同的一个思考角度，来帮助我们的家长思考孩子他的这个升学规划如何能延伸到他的人生规划，如何能帮助他进入这个顶级大学之后呢，同时能帮助他的这个人生呢走得更宽更顺。好的，现在呢我们就把时间呢交给我们的嘉宾 Frank Lin。Frank, hi. Can you let me see?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, cool. So let me stop sharing. Now it's all your time. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Okay. All right. All right. Hang on 1 second. Let me share my screen then. All right. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, forgive me for being a little bit late on coming in. I was like a minute late because I was talking to one of the case teams. They just decided to reach out to me. Of course, when it rains, it pours, right? But that's also my background because I think they watch a lot of Star Wars. So I always say the same thing, but I think it's apropos for what we're doing today as well. So as you have already probably been told, I was asked to kind of talk about how I do admissions consulting or advisory for folks in general. And just to caveat this, a lot of you probably know this about me already. It's not something that I do full time, right? It's not my background either. My background is investments. So we'll kind of go through all that stuff quickly. And what I really want this to be in a way is sort of a town hall for you guys, okay? So I'll go through basically the macro of what we do, at least on my side, how I think of it, and what has been successful generally in the past. And after that, you guys, if you want to ask questions, that's really where it's at. Because I think the understanding of this you'll find with me is probably disparately different than a lot of what you've been told. And I found it very interesting over some of the experiences I've had with different cases with different students, both directly from China as well as here in the States, as to maybe how things are done generically in this business. But anyway, that being said, let me tell you why I do it and what I'm after at the end of the day. All right, so those of you who don't know who I am, I think there's already a pretty good bio given about me, but my background really is in the investment sector. I come from Wall Street. Prior to that, I was also an engineer. So you could consider me a combination of business and quant together. Today, that's what I run. I run quantitative product for my own business. So that's really what my main thrust is. Now, as we've kind of done these things and you get older, you want to make sure that it's not just something that's benefiting you, right? You always want to make sure that it's something that benefits holistically people that you care about, which, your network grows more and more, hopefully, as you get older, and there are more and more people you do want to help. And so it's one of those things where it's sort of the confluence of it and the convergence was probably about the right time for me. So a good friend of mine that was the head of the pension here in Rhode Island, where I live, we would talk a lot. He's an ex-Goldman guy, 20 years. And, he asked me if I'd be willing to teach a class or two, to which initially I said no. But I lost a bet to him. So there you go. I've been doing that for the last 2 years. The first term was for the bet. The last year and a half was because I wanted to do it. So I teach investments at this small little Catholic college that's right next to Brown University, actually. And interestingly enough, Brown had actually asked me to do the same over there because they don't technically have a business school, but I actually turned that down. So if anybody ever wants to know, I can go ahead and talk about those stories. So I've always got a ton of them, right? All right, so I think Sally raised a hand. Sally, how about this? Let me just crank through this stuff. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. And then after that, just keep your questions till the end and just let me know, all right? But I'll definitely get to all your questions for that. All right, so I think Angie, who runs BizWise, and she's been a friend of mine for quite a few years, actually. We go way back when she was working at Two Sigma and a whole bunch of general Wall Street things that we do. Okay, so I know her as a good person, and she made me the CFO, but you'll find this out about me. I hate titles, whether it's when I'm teaching as a professor. Students always call me that. I'll say, don't do that, right? Because I want to earn that. So if you want to call me that later, that's fine, but I don't like the elitism that it comes with it. I prefer to earn everything that I do. So anyway, that's my title here, but I like to think of myself as sort of one of the many good instructors that's here, hopefully. Okay. And most importantly for me, I have a now 9-year-old, just turned 9 2 days ago. So that's my daughter, and she's kind of the light of my life. And so I learned so much being around her, and I actually am very grateful for the students that are around here because I learn a lot from them too. It's one of the things that I think in a way helps keep my investment business alpha and high level, because you're always figuring out what the next demographic trend is implicitly from all these young superstars in the future. So the final thing is that, yes, I do occasional admissions consulting or advice. So we'll just talk about that a little bit more, but I only look at what the most difficult ones to admit are generally, because I find that challenging, and I love the folks that try to give that a shot. That's what I do. All right. So you might ask, like, what my motivations are behind doing this. And again, it's not my full-time gig. So what is it really? Well, I mean, in a way, if you just kind of think about it, for me, and I'm sure a lot of you folks out there, it's like, money's important, but it's not the most important necessarily at the end of the day, right? Our next generation is probably much more important than that. Money's just a proxy for that kind of thing. And, many times when I was in Wall Street, I didn't actually meet them directly, but you'd see some of these folks that were just as philanthropic and just as real. So folks that I think of that would fit this would be folks like Ken Langone and Bernie Marcus, Home Depot founders. Those guys never asked for too much press, right? But, Ken funded NYU's medical program full in perpetuity, right? Every doctor there does not have to pay tuition once they get in. That's something to be said about what you do. I think Bernie built, the entire Atlanta aquarium, city aquarium over there, and nobody really knows it's him. But these guys have always been folks that I kind of looked up to as if you're going to try to do something to give back, that's something you should do once you get to a certain point in your life. So that's what I felt was important. And I sort of converged, wasn't that I had this admissions consulting in mind, right? It just so happened that my friends at the time were all getting a little bit older, right? And their kids were going to college. Mine's a little bit younger because I had her late. But, they just talked to me about that because it's the classic, the parents want the best for the kids, but the kids are getting to the teenage years, and you know how that is, right? So for those of you who have teenagers, and they don't always listen to their parents, and that has nothing to do with the parents. It just has everything to do with them being a teenager and you just being the parent, right? So sometimes listening to a third party is actually, for whatever reason, is more effective. We used to kind of joke about it. We would say that I'd have one of my friends say that they wanted, let's say, their son to take out the trash, right? And the son would say no. Then I would say, let me try it. And so I'd ask him, can you take out the trash? And he'd take out the trash, right? So it has nothing to do with me. It's just that I'm different, right? I'm the flavor of the month. So found it kind of interesting that was the case. But when you talk to those young people, you find out just how much they actually do know, which is really interesting. They might not know why, but they actually do know a lot. So it taught me quite a bit as well. And so I found it very interesting. When I was in school, though, right? And that was some over 2 decades ago now, right? So that doesn't make me feel good. But when I was at Wharton, you know, a lot of us participated in the admissions program, sort of reading essays and whatnot. I didn't do it, but a lot of my friends that were very close to me did, and they would tell me what's going on over there. And, you know, some of it's very good. It talks about, you know, fit, you know, qualitative skills, things like that, leadership potential. Some of that stuff was not very good. It's what you would expect or suspect, especially after seeing what, you know, has come to pass in the last year or two about the lawsuits for Asian discrimination, right? So we all know that this exists, right? But this is basically the system. So how do we do that? Well, you know, I thankfully was one of the people that made it through one of those gates, right? Like University of Pennsylvania was kind enough to let me in. I want to say that I think when I went into University of Pennsylvania, their ranking as a business school was #1. And then when I left, I think they were #3. So I don't know if there's a correlation between me going there and their ranking dropping, but I don't know. I did make a change, some sort, I guess. But I wanted to make sure that our next generation understood sort of the best learnings of what I felt was important in my journey sort of to get there. And that's where it kind of came to pass, where the confluence of something informal and more formal in terms of an admissions process is something I started to think about more, right? So the reality is for me, I'm a curious person and I love to hear different viewpoints. And if I can change the curve for the better for our future generations, then why not, right? So that's really what I'm after. Right. So, you know, I'm a reasonably good fan of Elon Musk in terms of what he says. So one of the things that he said is always look at things from first principle. So I'm going to ask something here that's absolutely anathema to most of the people that are in this group, right? Because we as Asian Americans, in terms of culture or Asian in general, we have a tendency to focus primarily on academics and be very driven to do well in these areas. So, but Elon always says in first principles that, you know, start from the very basics of why. So I thought about this for a while and I said, you know, for college, the question I should ask is why even go, right? And like I said, most people will be like, you're crazy. But think about it. And some of the best people in the world either didn't go to college or dropped out, right? Especially here in the States. Why is that the case, right? Mark Zuckerberg dropped out, right? Ken Griffin dropped out. Those are both Harvard, right? What is it? Sergey Brin, Larry Page, same thing. So Bill Gates, right? From my generation. Even think about sports, which is a really pretty good proxy for elite stuff. Like how many people just leave college in the middle to go to the pros, right? So, you know, that's one of the things that I would say, if you think about, right? Maybe we have to think from first principles and try to figure out what's going on there. So why don't we do that? I basically thought about it very broadly, okay, and just felt, let's kind of go through that. So I put like this, why go or why not go, okay? Just to see what's going to happen, right? Sometimes this helps. A little bit of the consulting in me. So why go? I just thought of some basic stuff. I'm sure you guys can think of a lot more. Okay. I think because it's the brand, right? Everybody knows it's good, right? Everybody's heard of it. So it adds equity to what you do, right? Reputation, okay? So because everybody said so, that's what I always say. Like when you're a young person, you kind of follow what your parents say and maybe folks around you, right? So it seems to be the right way to go, right? And they advertise that you learn so much being around there, right? The teaching and whatnot. And then of course, outside of that, you can apply it, right? Get yourself a good job, right? But if you think about it, right? The 4 years of your life, okay? It can be very expensive. It's only going to get more expensive, right? It goes higher than the rate of inflation by a good amount, if not 2x or 3x that every single year, right? And the other questions I ask are, you got all these academics and all the books in the world, right? How much of that stuff do you actually use? How many of us actually remember all the stuff that we did in college? Now, I probably should not ask that to this audience because everybody here is extremely well-read and studious. But if I ask that to an American audience, they'd probably say very less than maybe 10%, right? Okay, so that's really what I would just tell, right? Yeah. And let's see, what else to talk about here? I see a whole bunch of hands raised, but you know what? Let me just keep running here, and you'll see. Let's go. So let me do that. All right. So what are we missing? Okay. If you think about all those things that I just talked about, you've got these tangible criteria that you can use. But the reality is you're missing the whole point of what college probably should be at the elite level. You're missing the humanity of it all. Okay. So when we study, right, I can remember this for me. It's very much something you can do alone, right? Sometimes you do best doing it that way. Yeah, you got teams, you got projects, all this kind of stuff. But the reality is that, you know, to learn materials, right, foundations, it's not something you necessarily need to talk to somebody about, right? It's a lot of repetition, it's a lot of practice, right? And so in that vein, it's not very social, right? So if you think about all of us that have gotten to the point that we are in our respective careers, right? I don't think that any of us could have done it alone. The other thing I would tell you is just for those of you who are big folks and proponents of tech, and you know that AI is coming along, what's the one thing that AI is really good at? It's not good at forming relationships, is it? It's good at what is tangible, known boundary conditions, and solving a system set of equations, right? Probabilities. So what you think is safe in careers or where you're going may not be safe in a decade or two at the rate that AI progresses geometrically, right? So we don't know, but I mean, that's one possible risk. Right? So what did I learn coming out of Wharton and, you know, so far in my career, right? That, to be honest with you, being at the elite colleges is not about the studies, right? It's actually about network. That's all it is. So to network, right, requires a certain degree of perspective and a certain degree of maturity. Not necessarily knowing exactly what you want, but knowing maybe what you don't want. Knowing that what you don't like and some of the types of folks that you do like and how to build those connections and forge those ties, right? So I wrote it very, very bluntly here, right? It said, look, you want a place where your peers are either as smart as you or maybe a little bit smarter, right? And they're constantly challenging to do better, to run the race faster than you've ever done before, to run it better, to run it more efficiently, right? So this is really what things are about to me in college. And if you don't have that perspective, you don't know why, then that can be a real problem because you're not going to maximize the usage of that particular college and its respective network, okay? So this is where I'm starting to come from in terms of perspective. All right, so we go back to what Elon said and the first principles we talked about, right? And the one thing that I would tell you is that I don't agree with Elon on everything, that's for sure. Most of the students know me that I teach at the university, and they know that I can be uncompromising like Elon in my beliefs, but I'm always willing to listen to other perspectives. I think Elon's the same to a degree, but he's probably even more uncompromising when it comes to his views. And then personally, I don't know that he's done that good of a job, right? Because everybody knows that he doesn't exactly have the traditional nuclear family that we all have generally, okay? So that part, I always say everybody has their strength, right? And for Elon, he chose different forks in the road than somebody like myself would have chose, right? And that's made him wildly successful in many ways. But I don't know how successful he is in other ways. So we'll have to see about that, I guess. But I actually talked to, I believe, one student that was a VisWise student here, and she actually knew one of his sons in some competition, I believe, that they both collectively joined. So I thought that was really neat. It's a really small group. I almost got him to my small college, but then his network blew up, so he never returned my calls ever again. But I was trying to get him to show up for a speech or a little seminar, just to talk about things in a very light manner. Okay. But if we take a look at this slide right here, all I'm trying to say here is like, just see the two highlights right here. First, it says, don't just follow trend. It means that, yes, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right? Or the sincerest form of flattery, right? But at the end of the day, just following the trend's not going to make you successful, right? Copying something's not going to make you successful, right? And then it's a constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. And that's doing two things. One is making you better, right? In terms of what you are sort of technically in your field, and maybe, using transplanting ideas from other fields and trying to innovate based on that. The other part of it is really eliminate your self-bias. That's one of the hardest things, and it actually is a big deal in investments as well. A lot of people think of it as being, oh, it's just, it's more quantitative, it's more systematic, it's more this and that. No, it's actually, you have to understand what your risk level is too. And I tell all the students the same thing. Whatever your comfort zone is of where you're probably going to optimize your return, okay, in investments. And if you don't know your own self-bias, you got an issue there because you don't know how you're actually making your decisions, okay? So that's how I perceive what these two comments directly to me mean. All right, so what does this mean when we put this into the lens of elite admissions? This is for me, right? I think about the school thought process first. So these days, you got the big D word, which is a big hot button issue, right? It can be good, it can be not so good. For most of us, I would say in many ways, this is a not so good thing, okay? You've heard about, test scores being rescinded and not looking at a lot of hardcore sort of tangible areas of merit, right? For the sake of the less tangible, the intangible, or the qualitative sectors, okay? But if you think about it just from a standpoint, I think thematically, what most elite schools want at the top, right? They want people that are going to be the next generation leaders of society in whatever way, shape, or form they choose to decide. Like in business, it'd probably be CEOs. So I put it here because I'm biased that way. But it could be political leaders of the world. It could be social leaders of the world, these kinds of things. But they have to have that aptitude, be able to mobilize and get people to believe in what they do and follow that with them, right? So most schools believe that you need a very diverse pool, the melting pot, just like the United States is known for, right? And basically then from that melting pot, understand what most people sort of want. Then you can create the next big idea that leads to the next generation of leader CEOs and improves the school's brand and rep, right? But if you think that that's what you need, diversity-wise, you need all different sorts of ideas, right? Some commonality within the chaos, right? Then you cannot imagine there can be a set known solution for that, right? It's one of these things where you have to think about it from the standpoint is that means that it's very individualistic, right? It's one of these things that you have to have full faith and belief in what you do and be able to back it up. So that's why I put there, you have to know why you want to go, okay? And as much as, I love my parents, and I'm sure your sons and daughters love you, it's cannot be just for you or for my daughter, cannot be for me. It has to be for them, right? And they have to know that from the core, the fiber of their being. That's the most difficult part, is to make that jump, because it's part of leaving the nest in many ways, okay? And the other part that is going to be hard to handle is it's probably going to be the first lesson for them in adversity and unfairness, because I related it to a lot of folks, is that it's like a beauty pageant, okay? You have these contestants that come up and every single one of them is effectively flawless. If you ask them questions, they are extremely, they're extremely well-versed, right? And there's not something that in particular can trip them up. okay? And they're extremely refined and personable as well, okay? But it could just be on that given day that a judge comes in, and that judge tends to like people with blue eyes or people with blonde hair. And I'm not, stereotyping. I'm just saying that it could just be arbitrary that day in that analogy. And you happen to be a brunette. There's nothing you can do about it, okay? So when you are always dealing with an overflow of demand and a limited supply, things will be unfair. There's just no way around it. Somebody is going to get screwed, right? The only thing you can do, in my opinion, is present yourself the best you can. So how do we do that, right? Well, this is where we got to get down to sort of the nitty gritty. And this is what I believe, is that nobody here is perfect, no matter how good we are. That's the point. The point is actually the imperfection, and how you sort of figure out how to use that imperfection to either improve yourself or make others improve around you, or both. So this is really what this is. It's the foundations of how we lead people, right? Leadership is never taking a bunch of people together with some problem that you already have a known path to solve. Okay. Leadership is one where you have multiple variables. You don't know what's going on. You make the best call you can. And through the force of your personality and the confidence that you have in what you do and your ability to adapt, people follow you. And so that's what they look for, is how do you sort of overcome your own imperfection and basically make people perform as perfect as possible, including yourself. So that's really what this is to me. So solution set for this, right? If we're talking about this, since we don't have a known set of best practices or best methodology to do, especially on the intangible side, to me, it's always custom. It has to be something that you talk to each individual candidate about and see if there's actually going to be a fit. Because the schools themselves are trying to create that mosaic. You can think of it as they're trying to create this painting with all these people and trying to make it fit and make it as scenic and majestic as possible so that everyone will be uplifted in that way, okay? But imagine if everybody was just the same shade of red, right? Or the same type of tree, right? And you had a painting full of that. It would be pretty bad, right? So that's the thing, is that individuality in this case and in the admissions process is key, critical. That's actually the separation, okay? So it doesn't matter if you didn't save the world. It matters what you offer in terms of the confidence in yourself and what you can do. Okay? So that's that. So what do I do? Well, because it's custom, right? I don't specifically have a set structure that I use. Okay, I need to know who I'm talking to when I do this. So believe it or not, I spend a good amount of time chatting with folks that may want to do this, and I tend to be very selective about who I talk to or who I qualify. I shouldn't say I'm selective about who I talk to. I talk to everybody, but that's what keeps me so busy. But I enjoy it because I like seeing what young people's ideas are and what their parents' hopes and dreams are as well. I think it's very important because it keeps me centered too for when I have to raise my own little one, right? So you guys actually all help me in many ways, okay? So that's why those qualification interviews can be very long, and they're not necessarily super rigorous, but what they are they delve into very deeply what it is that you're looking for. So I always tell people just to be themselves. We just do this kind of thing because there's no way to hide it. Okay. And the other thing too is that I'm a certain personality. You guys probably know that pretty well by now. I tend to be very straightforward. I can come right at you. And that's maybe not the best fit for everybody. There's always somebody who would be a better fit than me at some point in time. So I have no ego to bruise there. It's more just that if I see something that I find very interesting, I want to definitely see where we can carry it. And so that's always been sort of my mantra, that curiosity about people. Okay. So when I do this sort of process, for most Chinese parents that I've met, first time when I try and show them sort of the process of what I do, they look at it, they're like, this is just chaos. Like, why does this work? And that's what this whiteboarding, this soul searching is all about, is turning the chaos and the entropy into something that is distilled, that is really who your son or your daughter is. So that's what we try to find out. And obviously, the more time, the more runway we have, right? But we've done things from, 2 to 3 years out, all the way to, an 8-week process or a 6-week process. I got one going right now that's from China. And the person, I just had a sense about him, is extremely principled person. And I thought, well, you know what? I don't know. It's probably a 50-50 at best, but we'll see what we can do. And, obviously English is his second language, but I just talked to him this morning and he was showing me his write-ups for his ideas for some of his essays. And I'm telling you, it's like quantum leap ahead, and it's only been 2 weeks. So you got to give it to kids. It's really amazing what they can do if you take the limiters off. And that's what my hope always is. Can I say I'm successful 100% of the time? Absolutely not. I'm not God, right? But what I am is I'm a person that has a very clear understanding of what I want and what I think is right, what will work, what I think will work. So that's how I just proceed. I proceed based on what I know and keep adapting as the particular candidate maybe needs it. Okay. So I wrote in here a couple of bullet points, which is one is that if your son or daughter is a high achiever, which I assume they already are, anybody in this group is probably already like that. You don't have to worry about crazy things like GPAs or SAT scores. They don't consider what they do all that hard, to be honest with you, in their mind, because if it was hard, they wouldn't achieve at such a high level. So the hard part is actually trying to get them to understand that it is hard. Because when you lead groups in the future, those people are not going to be necessarily of that same aptitude, right? So these are just little things. That's just one point of view that I thought I'd just bring up that I found very interesting, right? And I looked back at my own background and I realized I felt the same way. When I first wrote my first few essays in those apps, I did a reasonably good job. It's not like I got rejected from everything, but when I went all the way to the top, especially for MBA, I didn't get a single school that I tried for the first time. Now, thankfully, I tried it when I was in my mid-20s because I had a few extra years to prepare because I skipped a bunch of grades. Classic, stereotypical Chinese parents, right? So that's, thankfully I made it out of it just fine, but it took me a year to figure out this. And of course, I didn't have a consultant or anything like that. I just thought it through reasonably logically as to why this would happen. And the only thing I could figure out is that it was the intangibles. I didn't dig deep enough into my soul. When I did that, okay, Stanford was okay with me, and also Penn was okay with me, and I didn't even apply early decision. And my SAT scores were, or my GMAT score was not 800. Okay, wasn't even close. There's another story with a friend of mine on that same vein. In that year, he wanted to go to Harvard Business School. His GMAT was 550. He took it 3 times. Okay, he still went to Harvard Business School, and he was a white Caucasian. For the demographic, if you want to know. It's just because he really represented himself well everywhere else. So we have a saying in this is that my firm belief is that test scores and GPA will never get you in, but it can keep you out. That's the only thing it does, really, at the elite level, because everybody is so good. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an aside, a little bit of a tangent. Okay, so what do I focus on? As you probably know, I focus on intangibles. I focus on who you really are as a person, the actual soul of the person, trying to bring that out, right? And it's not something I can fake because I don't fake anything. It's not something they can fake. It's something that they need to find. So that's what the journey is about. In a way, if you think about it, right, it's a proxy for maturity, right? Because if you think about it, that's what we all are. We're always trying to find who we really are, okay? And so the hard part is being able to do that when you're 17 or 18 years old. It's really unfair because you just came into adulthood. You can't even drink yet, at least in the United States here, for another 3 years. So that's something that is unfair, but it's also required because these schools are looking for the absolute top of the stack, future leaders of the world. And those people always see things a few years ahead of everybody else. And that's really what this is, okay? So when I do it, right, I evaluate where they are, try to figure out if they're a fit for me personality-wise, try to develop their own style when they've learned to write, to express themselves, okay? We'll look at who would be, good folks to help them in terms of a reference. And this last bullet here in here is really important to me. I don't write anybody's essays. I don't believe in that. I believe that when you actually get in for your own merit and it's for your own, edification, then you realize you can do anything as a child. You become a man or a woman at that point in time. It's amazing to see that when they get accepted, sometimes like you'll get some of the most battle-hardened sports athletes that have been out there. They've won so many close matches or competitions or whatever. But when they finally get in and it's theirs and they did it, I mean, that's when all the emotions come out, right? And it always surprises me because some of these folks are really, really solid on their emotions at being able to hold it together. But they were having trouble holding it together when they get in because they knew it was all them. And that's the right way to do it, I think. There have been so many times where I've been referred to sort of at the last hour or last minute for a lot of these types of engagements. And, one of my friends, let's say, would want some advice, and they'd have a team of consultants, like a whole slew of these people, like trying to help them or whatever. And especially the ones that are in, I don't want to say specifically or call anybody out, but there are a lot of folks that are in Shanghai that were just saying like, oh, look, we'll just write the essay and recommendations for them. And I basically, talked to the child and I talked to the parents, is that what you want? If getting the piece of paper is that important to you, if that's what you want, then so be it. You can go ahead and do that, but that's not going to be me. The reason why is because I don't think that's value added for the child in the long term. I think that they'll just realize that it wasn't really them. And then do they really know why they're going? Do they know how to maximize the network? Are they going to come back and help the family business really grow? Or are they just going to sit there and wait for the next consultant to come around and fib something? That's the thing with me, okay? I feel like for the long run, it is a disservice to the potential and the greatness of the children. So that's why I don't do it, okay? Now, given that, right, there's supposed to be a higher failure rate and all this kind of stuff because you're doing it completely by the books and you're doing it without any sort of shenanigans a la Lori Loughlin or USC, dropping a briefcase of cash at the door just before, they happen to get in, right? Okay. But what I'm saying is that nothing is more sweet than overcoming adversity and knowing that you did it against all odds, which I can attest to, and a lot of the people that are part of my network attest to. So how do I foster that? Is that it's not a linear path. It is not easy. So it requires a lot of reinforcement in terms of being a leader, being able to get back up and dust yourself off when somebody's put you back down, okay? I've had instances where, I had a candidate who had every single minority advantage you could think of. She was both Black and Hispanic by descent. She was also salutatorian of her class and extremely articulate. She had her best friend was an Indian girl. She was rated top 5 in her class. So all the tangible stuff that you guys probably want, right? SAT scores about the same. Hers was my particular candidate was a little bit higher. But she was the person, my candidate was the person that started all the clubs that her best friend joined at a high level. So they both applied to Princeton, early decision, which I didn't think was the right fit for her, but I said, whatever. You want to do that, that's fine. I got called in after she didn't get into Princeton ED. But worst case, her friend did. So by all the numbers and all the metrics and all the understanding of getting in and starting something, innovating, all that kind of stuff, this candidate was superior, plus she had demographic advantage, yet she didn't get in. So she was distraught. And her father was a friend of mine from Wharton. And so we were talking about it, and I said, look, you just never know how this stuff works. Like I said, it's a beauty pageant. So there could have been another person that was Dominican and African-American that happened to get, just like her, that happened to give $50 million to Princeton. And there is not a darn thing you can do about that. We don't know why the decision was made that way. But what I can do is I can take a look at what she had written and see if it was deep enough. And when we actually did that, we found that we could do better. She did a lot more soul searching, really dug out what was, to the point where when she wrote the essay, I got a call back from her father, and her father was not happy. And I said, what's going on? And he said, no, it has nothing to do with you. I'm just asking you if this essay is real, if this story is real. And I said, well, why wouldn't it be real? She's the one that wrote it. And she said, I had no idea her grandmother did this to her. This is borderline abusive. Want to go down to Dominican Republic and go have it out with her. And I said, look, I didn't know you didn't know that, but that's your daughter, okay? And when that happened, you will see a slide of what happened after that, what the result was. She ended up going to Harvard, but anyway, that's what that is, okay? So that's the kind of thing that I always tell people, is that you just never know. There's so many interesting stories that I found, over the years. So like I said, I'm blessed to have such great people around me from the next generation. All right, so we're just talking about that, right? So the results, because everybody wants to know. I don't do many of these things. I'm not a factory, okay? I do very few of these things a year because, as you can see, I've got so many balls in the air, but I'm trying to keep them all in the air, and I'm trying to do a good job of it. So I try to make sure that once committed, I spend as much time as I need to make sure that it is done the way I feel satisfied and the candidate feels satisfied. So for elite, and all the headers for the universities you see down there, they were admits from some of our universities, right? Yeah, you can see the statistics, okay? Now, I would bias that by saying that, look, I have a qualification interview that allows me to sort of pick who I like. Well, I think it was a good fit for me. But still, I don't think you're going to find numbers much higher than that. And why? Because it's the children. It's them. It's really what it is. At the end of the day, that's them. Not me, not some consultant, not some fabricated identity that they wanted to do. It's them. And when that happens, there is no defense against that in a top level application. Okay. So what I have here on the left-hand side is just this particular individual that went to Harvard's additional card. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, right, obviously, when you get the admit letter, it usually comes in a big package, comes in a letter format, has all these other materials with it. You get the big package, you know you're doing just fine. You get the little small envelope, unfortunately, well, disappointment, right? But sometimes you will get another card. And the other card is, please come to our university. And that's what happened here. She sent me this afterwards. She goes, you know what this is? I mean, like, it's another card. And it's kind of handwritten. And I said, oh yeah, I you know, honestly, I don't think about this stuff too much, but I knew your essay was strong. What do you think gets people in then? You think it's your SAT score that they're about to throw out because they think a lot of people think it's unfair? I think Mr. Gonzalez, the assistant director of admissions here, put it best right here. Okay, so that's all that is. Anyway, I just thought I'd show it to you because it's kind of interesting. Right. So all this stuff put together, talk about admissions, what you can do with it. And that's the main goal focus for what you do here. Okay? But what is it that I'm driving at? Actually, to me, the admissions part of it is maybe just but the first step. It's not the endpoint goal for me. So what I decided to do is I decided to show you a little bit about what I do at the Catholic University that I teach at part-time. Okay. So I've been teaching there for about just a little bit over 2 years now. Again, the first term was because I lost a bet, but after that, I really liked the kids there. And most of them, nationality-wise, are not Asian. They're primarily Caucasian because it's just the faith. Okay? But they do have a reasonably significant and growing underrepresented minority base. Okay, but not a lot of Chinese students, almost none. Okay. So what is this? Well, basically, this is a group of quotes from my phone in the last month, a month and a half or so. Maybe, well, I shouldn't say that. It was about a month's worth of stuff. The students are on my phone. There's about, I would want to say 20 to 25, maybe 30 students by now that are on my phone. Those are people that decide to keep in touch with me. They're part of my core group over there at the university, and we're building the network. Okay, so for me, the admissions is just the first step. The reality for me is actually uplifting the next generation. That sounds corny, but it's true, because to me, that's where my daughter is going to be. And I don't want her to go into the world alone if that's what she wants to go, if she wants to go into business or something like that. I want to make sure that she has somebody to talk to. I guarantee you, when she's 16, she's probably not going to want to talk to dad. She's probably going to want to talk to somebody cooler, right? Okay, so that's okay. I can accept that. So I'm a guy that runs investments and I do a lot of hedging. So that's my hedge for this life. Okay, so let me tell you a little about it. So again, small little Catholic university, not top 50, not even top 100, you would say. So all I'm doing is just teaching investments. There is no in to the majors, right? It's what they call non-target, okay? But since those 2 years, what have we done? We basically had 0 placements in the front office of Wall Street. For those of you guys who know, that's basically the people that actually run deals, okay? But no, after we're done, those 25, 30 people had 90% of them had jobs. And they would be at these places. There's even a crypto guy there that in 2 years, he probably is a 8-digit or close to 9-digit net worth. And he was just different than everybody else. But that's what it is, okay? So we're all very happy for him. We just don't know how the heck he did it, okay? So what does this mean? Well, to me, it means that whatever method that I'm employing, right, seems to be effective across every single known bucket of demographics. Doesn't matter if you're Catholic or not, because I'm not Catholic. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian. Doesn't matter whether you're girl or boy, right? And I think what it all comes down to is that I have a healthy respect for people. I always did. I'm age agnostic. I don't care, right? I look at everybody sort of as a black curtain interview, audition. I don't see you as a particular bias. I see you as, are you a good person or not? That's all I look at first. And then I try to figure out what if the potential is for you to actually get in and give you a realistic estimate of what's going on. So as you can see, you can take a look at some of these quotes that are in here. I mean, I couldn't have made those up myself, right? So this is what this is. My objectives are multiple, but this is what I do on the side when I have time. All right, this is another follow-up. This is why I think the network effect actually is what we all actually seek at some point in time. And it's not actually the admissions. The admissions is but the basis to get to the network effect. So you have to understand that you want it. But these are all three different particular snapshots from my phone that talk about how people got jobs. So this is one that's most recent. Basically, investment banking jobs are, the elite of finance, and numbers have been going up, especially for people coming out of Wharton and a lot of the elite finance business schools, right? But this is one where he just got the offer yesterday. And it was a 6-digit number, not including bonus and the sign-on itself. And he's a Providence College kid. Basically a nobody. How'd he do it? Network. Understanding what you need out of the school, the why, the ability to liaise with people, to lead them. He ended up, when I met him 2 years ago, he was just a kid that would blush a lot and get really kind of nervous when he was talking to somebody like me. Now he leads the entire finance club at PC. That's just one of his minor things. He went to Fidelity Quant for the summer, right? Another person went to go work for my friend at the state pension because I told him, I said, look, you put me into this place, cause me trouble, I'm going to cause you trouble. Okay, so hire one of my kids. And so he was a New York Stern guy, that GSAM guy. And he's like, well, I'm going to hire the guys that I want, that I need, right? So I'll put your kid on the docket along with people from Wharton, Brown, Northwestern, and the Big H, that school up in Boston. Guess who he hired? And it wasn't because of me calling him every day, because I didn't. I call him just that once. So he took him, the kid from PC, hungrier, knew the knowledge base better, understood what it took intangibly to help him, things like that. Okay, so that's what this is. This is just but 3 iterations of how this stuff works with me and my core group. Okay, so that's the reason why, like I said, this is what I do. This is why I like it. And I think the admissions process is but one piece of that for me. So, most recently, I think having been part of IzWise has been a fantastic experience for me. I hope it has been for you as well. And the one thing I would say is that, Angie definitely knows how to scale and maybe sort of help replicate the things that I can provide within the organization. So that's one of the things I've talked to her about. I don't know what's going to happen with respect to that. What I do know is that this is the way I do things, okay? And it has been very effective for the small group that I have helped along. So I'm proud to be a part of that. Most of that, 90%, 95%, maybe 99% of the achievement is all with respect to them. But what I always tell people is that you think about, like, again, if you compare it to like pro sports, and if you think about professional sports, in an NFL game, when you have the Detroit Lions play against, Detroit being my hometown, so I know them very well. They stink all the time, okay? So you have them playing against, let's say, the old New England Patriots with Tom Brady. Do they win because they have so many more people? There's so many fast, the Patriots win because they have the faster people. They're all taller. They all, have more athletes, that the coaching staff has more information or more tech. No, it's the same amount of people. They all run about the same speed. They weigh about the same. They're about the same strength. How come the Patriots always win by 30 points? It's the execution, right? So that execution of this much of a fraction of a percent, just like in trading, in investment and whatnot, the difference between making a lot of money, winning a game, or completely losing your shirt and being a perennial just fall guy for everybody else. So maybe what we do is we add that little piece to the equation and give you the boost if it's done right. That's how I look at it. Okay. So finally, just, that's just all the informal stuff, right? But for those of you guys who like real articles and press, this is just a few pictures and a few blurbs about, what the students have done in the last couple of years, right? So I know, I think Angie's from Yale MBA. So unfortunately, I'm going to rip on Yale SOM, School of Management here. But this year, the undergrad team, of which I actually didn't advise, but 2 of these particular students are my students, are my core group, okay? They basically won the regional CFA competition, okay? Who did they go up against? They went up against Yale School of Management MBA. So a bunch of undergrads from a non-target school went up against an MBA class, Yale, probably top 10 MBA program, Ivy, and they thrashed them. So go figure. Don't talk to me about it, it's them, okay? But they didn't do it before, coincidentally, right? For those of you guys who are in finance, anybody know who this guy is? That's Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair. Who is standing next to him? One of my students, right? He's going to Goldman Asset Management. So anyway, it is the remarkable ability of young people in our generation, right? And what we also do is just like Angie did, you raise money for mass, right? I did the same thing in my own way. We weren't even talking to each other at the time. We were both too busy, but it just gives you an idea of the mantra, the ethos of this organization, of the people I believe that are at this place, okay? We don't sit around and wait for things to go bad or things to get worse. If we're gonna do something, just go ahead and go do it, right? And that's what we did. So as you can see here, those are just the students bringing a whole bunch of boxes of PPE over to try to help back in 20, okay? So when we do things like this, it's a learning experience for the students as well, is that there is nothing outside your reach. You could basically, with the amount of motivation that you have, if you have enough, you can do anything, right? And that's what a real activity is. That's what a real extracurricular is. It isn't checking a box. It is literally doing that. So that's what I always try to preach and actually try to do. So that's pretty much the end of it at the end of the day. I just want you to see how I think about admissions and admissions advising in general. It actually isn't directly put towards that. It's basically based on philosophy of what is needed for people to succeed in the future. And our young people deserve that. So, like I said, thank you very much. I'll take questions.
Okay, thank you, Frank Lin, for such a fantastic webinar, which provide a new angle for our parents to rethink about how to really reshape our children's future. 好的，各位，现在的话呢，我们可以就是说大家如果有问题的话呢 ，you can type in the chat box if you have questions, or if you raise your hand, I will give you the right to unmute yourself. And then I see one question popping out. Okay. So Frank, I will translate into English for you if it's typing in
Sure.
Chinese. Okay, so if the kids want to study computer science, a 12 years old kid, so how you think this kid need to plan ahead, and what type of resource you can recommend?
Okay. So the first thing I would do is, again, I would talk to this boy or this girl that's interested in comp sci and sort of ask him, what do you like about it? Is it because the games you play? Is it because you see, let's say, crypto and you find it really interesting? What is it that you're really looking for? And then what I would do is I would find, folks in those areas that he can talk to, hopefully around his age, right? The one thing that I always did, there's a particular, he's not a student of mine at PC, but he was someone I met when they were 15 years old. And he's a computer jock, just like your 12-year-old, okay? And self-taught, was a baseball player, actually age group elite baseball player when he was 12, but just didn't grow as tall or as strong as his other friends. So he had to try something else. So he just initially had interest in using tech and computer science and coding for finance, because he felt that finance was very sort of backwards. You want to change that, and you want to change financial literacy. So he actually went up to the Rhode Island State Legislature and actually petitioned for that, okay? And did I tell him to do that? No, I simply just said, look, you can't just sit in your desk and just think about what you want to do. Either use the computer to scale yourself and talk to people your age and create and mobilize a movement, or just link through your own connections, with parents' connections and whatnot, and see if you can talk to some people and get in front of somebody and let them know what the next generation is thinking. They might actually want to listen. And that's what happened. But over time, he got more and more interested, because it was finance, but he got more and more interested in crypto because crypto moves so much faster. And so the most recent I can tell you is that at 18 years old, he's looking at his own special purpose vehicle deals in the $10 million range by himself. His network is beyond mine. He still talks to me and has very great respect for what I say, but I always tell him, it's like, I can't help you as much as I used to. You have done too much. So I would just say that you always want to provide the child an avenue into what they really want to do. You have to figure out what it is that they really want to do and why. Once you understand what that is, then you can offer options. But you can't just sit there and say, well, if you're going to do comp sci, I think you should just do it, this traditional way, learn some C++, and then do this and do that. You might ask them, it's like, look, do you want to build your own robot? Do you want that robot to be like Elon's robot? If it's AI or something like that, then go ahead, learn the AI codes, learn PyTorch instead, and try it. So that's what I would tell.
Okay, so next question. How do you define strong character of a 15 to 17 years old? Yeah.
Okay, so principles, believe in what they do, actually say what they want to do, and then actually go do it. Doesn't have to necessarily mean that they're solving the problems of the world, right? Just if let's say I were to meet them or to talk to them, I can usually tell, like when I bring something up that is humane, that requires character to be able to understand, you can see how they respond. So I would just say, understanding that the world is not just about you, right? It's about the people around you that you care about as well. How are you going to be able to incorporate that into what you do on a daily basis? And it doesn't have to be, again, so well thought out. It just has to be somewhat instinctive in a way. The nature of the person has to be, and trustworthy and respectful.
Okay, so next question. How to find out who our kid is, what they want to do, what they are passionate about? How to inspire them to think about what they want to do and do better?
Yeah, so I would say, again, I think the American way is just sort of, throw darts at a target in random. Okay, I think for us, we tend to be a little bit too much on the discipline side. We'll look at something, let's say, example of, my daughter is that she plays piano, like I'm sure like a lot of folks do, right? Okay, and my wife, who's also Wharton, initially wanted to do it in a very structured way. So learn all the technique and classical and all that kind of stuff and see what they want to do. And I'm telling you, she hated that. She basically almost quit twice already, and she's not even 9. But what I've done for her is I said, why don't you tell me, you said before you wanted to play on a piano, why don't you tell me what you really like about it? And what it turned out was that she just liked to listen to songs that she found, in popular culture, and she liked those songs. I was like, well, why don't you just play those? Why don't you learn how to play by ear first instead? And so that's kept her interest for the last 2 or 3 years. I think what it is that to find a passion for the child, we all have to listen harder. We have to see what it is that the child really likes to do, as opposed to just looking at it from sort of an activity by activity basis. There has to be generally a reason why the child is sort of converging towards particular activities. It could, like, for example, for sports, it could be it's just that they're very athletic, or it could be they just enjoy the camaraderie. You got to figure out which. And then you can provide activities that go along that scope and see how that goes.
Okay, so next question. So Frank, will you encourage your students to involve in crypto investment?
It's not I encourage them, it's they encourage me. I actually have money with them now because they encourage me. I've always been a person that will listen to what you have to say, discuss it with you, and then if I think it's right, I will put money at it, because I want to show you that there isn't anything in between what we do. It is always the same thing. I will always put up the real, asset value to show that when I said I believe you, I actually do believe. So another example is during my investments class, we talk about investments from an academic perspective as well as sort of a practitioner perspective, which is where I'm from. And I will provide different sort of methodologies as to toolkits as to how to do particular investments. But I will never tell the students, for example, you should invest in X, Y, Z. I'll simply ask them, what do you like? And then when they say, oh, I like Lululemon or something, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I heard that they sell, athleisure type wear, but it's like $100 a pair of tights, right? And I told them, I said, first, you probably don't want to see me wearing tights. That's not going to be a good look for anybody. Second thing is, why do you need 7 pairs of athleisure tights? And it turns out that it's not just for working out, right? It's for a fashion statement as well. So, for example, the next week, if I think it's a good idea, you'll see me with a significant position in Lululemon. And the student will be kind of shocked that that is the case. But that is what I do. I want to prove a point, is that with a combination of their demographic understanding, I believe that's more an advantage than a disadvantage. And then the toolkit that I have, put the two together, and we'll see what happens. So what is the nitty gritty of that? I can tell you that the portfolio that we put together with the students, okay, I was very conservative with it. I held almost a 50% cash position at any one time, okay? But within 2 years, the return is 170% overall on the portfolio. So you find a professional manager that can do better than that. That's all I would tell you. That's what it is. It's not actually me telling people how to do crypto. It's them telling me what crypto is. And then I do the research backwards on my side, figure out what the available toolkits are, and then come back. And then basically it's a virtuous circle, continuous feedback. So they are just as much a peer to me as I am to them.
Okay, so did you guide student athlete recruits before? I mean, what's your experience with the sport recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, I've had 2 or 3 candidates that were pretty athletic. One that started his own ultimate frisbee league and turned it from nothing to being a sort of a regional activity that a lot of high schools started participating in. He ended up going to Harvard. He also liked to do American Revolutionary War reenactments because he's a big history buff. And then the other person that that I had talked to he was a nationally ranked tennis player, Asian American male, and both I would say the person that did ultimate frisbee, he's a Caucasian male. He's one of those people that says like, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being president of the United States someday. He just has this affinity for people and people gravitate towards him. And he's a very, very genuine person. And, you know, it's one of these things where he's just like sort of this natural leader, very, very outgoing. So that wasn't that difficult to sort of bracket. The age group standout tennis player, yeah, he was nationally ranked and everything. But the question was in terms of how did I sort of guide them along? I guided them along to the point where, again, same sort of whiteboarding, soul searching procedure. His particular essay ended up not being about tennis, even though that's his strongest suit on paper. His essay ended up being about him being an EMT, emergency medical technician during COVID, because that's what he did. He did it against the wishes of his parents, whom I know very well, and good friends of mine. But, you know, when we dug deep in there, the stories in there were so visceral and so real. I mean, if you were a parent, you probably would have been emotional by some of those stories because it was crazy. And I always tell people is that in tennis or in athletics, some types of sports, right, are very solitary. So it's based on your achievement alone. So if the school itself has a very good program for that, I think that's an advantage for you. However, if you're going into a particular major where it really is not relevant, that particular sport, all it does is it shows a dedication and ability to achieve. It doesn't show that you helped anybody else. So that in and of itself may not be your strongest suit. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, so next question. So if a high school student plans to take business or economics as a major in college, what extracurricular activities do you recommend?
Again, I recommend what they want. If they want to do business or economics, then they should figure out something they want to do with that. Or do something in a way that maybe even is somewhat 180 against it. Sometimes contrast is a good thing. I've had people go nonprofit, and then when they said that they wanted to rule the universe, to be richer than Jeff Bezos, they asked why. They're like, well, you know what? The nonprofit was really hard to get off the ground and nobody listened to us. So I realized that the way the world works is you need money. So I need to make that first, and then I'm going to make the nonprofit happen, and I'm going to force it down everybody's throat. And I was like, okay, that's a very good idea, right? But sometimes contrast can provide that. What I would say is that, for example, I think you don't want to be saying, I'm going to go do robotics and then do business, right? That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Even if you did something like chess, would it make sense? Sure, it's strategic, right? Short-term, long-term, mid-term, what? You know, start game, like the startup, mid-game, like you're growing the company, end game, like you're finishing, right? So again, think about what it is that your son or daughter is really after, right? Always remember extracurricular in a way is a metaphor for what they want to do. Why waste time on something you don't want to do?
Okay, so next question. So this audience asks, so they assume you are not just focused on business kids, right? You also help with the STEM kids. So what's the difference you see between those type of two kids, or no, what approach you will take for those two applications?
Well, I would first say that it's not really the difference between STEM and business. Again, the material is but a proxy. It's but a proxy of foundation. As I said, every kid is different. What I see that is more similar with every single case that I've dealt with that's been successful, that's most of them, is that they all have a passion for what they want to do. There is a sort of an instinctive reason as to why. And what we try to do is try to flesh that out. So whether it's STEM, whether you want to do, like I had one that was doing CRISPR, like biotech, you want to do that, she ended up going to Penn, versus, again, somebody that wants to either do crypto or wants to go to business via liberal arts in some way. Basically, they all have this intent to create something, to carve out something that is distinctly their own, but yet share it with the society at large or the people they care about at large. So that's what I see that is consistent with all of them. Now, what's different? Everything. Culture, background, gender, race, whatever, all the stuff you want to talk about, they're as diverse as they come, so I would just say that you could say that STEM people can be a little bit more technical in nature, but that's a trap because, again, if you are more technical in nature and you're Asian American, you're playing right into the hopper. That's not a good thing. You want to make sure that even in science, that you're able to bring the collective scientists together to evaluate whether ideas are really good or not, just like you would in business. It's no different.
Okay, so actually it's a question related to our previous question. So this parent asked, my son does not want to go to college. He's in junior and already started his own business and been doing very well. And he said most of knowledge are free and are available online. So you only go to college if you want to study STEM, law or medical. So how can I talk him into going to college?
Well, you have to approach it. I think the best way to approach it would probably, I wouldn't say have to, but the best way to approach it would be to understand where he's coming from. He's obviously an entrepreneur, right? So I think what you would want to say is you want to say something to the order of, there are schools out there that are very entrepreneurial in nature, right? It depends on what he's doing, but you would try to focus on schools that have other entrepreneurs or incubators, whatnot, that he can participate in, right? And if his interest is piqued to go to someplace, like, like right next to us in Brown, right? They have a Brown incubator. And I had a buddy of mine who was launching in sort of a Y Combinator type startup to look at these deals. And so we had 3 or 4 of these teams come in and pitch us, right? And it's real pitches, right? If they're looking for real money. And I just found it really interesting. It's like you get anything and everything in terms of the ideas, but they're fascinating. They're really, really neat. And so I can't imagine if it's already me, I'm already curious and interested, how interested he may be talking to those people. That's what I would say.
Okay. Zoe asked, my kid seems like everything you ask her to try, drawing, piano, chess, blah, blah, blah. But it's bothers me that what really she likes the most, how to help her to really identify the direction like that she really likes.
Yes, I know this is a big problem, right? And I tell you this in all honesty, I believe that sometimes at a certain age, right, being a parent kind of sucks because you want the best for your child, but yet they're not listening. And the reason why is because you've been with them for 12 or 13 years or 14 or 15 years, right? And they're just used to listening to you. So what happens is they know how to also filter you out at that point in time. So what I would say is sometimes we all, and I can't say that I've done this yet because I haven't got to your level yet. My daughter's only 9. But if I were to look forward and ask myself what I would do, I would get friends of mine that are very good in certain areas right? Not necessarily all business or finance or STEM or whatever, but you know, if I have a friend of mine that likes to play jazz and gig a band, right? I might take her one time to go see that, right? If I have another friend of mine who, you know, is really good at sports or likes to play extreme stuff, then maybe I might take her there to see how she's going to react, right? And the key with it is the friends, because you can always talk to them later on and say, hey, you want to talk to him? I mean, it's great. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. And he's got a unique perspective on things. And guess what? They will listen to them more. Sometimes it behooves you to talk to your friends pre and let them know that, hey, I mean, I could use a hand here. Because at the same time, I say the same thing to my students, honestly. I always tell them, like, in 10 years, I'm probably going to need your help because Sydney may not listen to me anymore. Okay. So, you know, if they can talk to her for 5 minutes, that's great. That's how I look at it. I always look at it this way. It's like, you know, when you divorce your ego aside from trying to help your child will realize that. Realize, like, well, you know what? I mean, you don't have to necessarily listen to it from me, right? Listen to from somebody who's elite in that area, right? And then maybe you can talk to them, and I won't ask you to do anything, but you'll figure it out. That's what it is. And then if you want to come back and talk to me, that's great.
Okay, so I think we pretty covered every questions. And so we probably can let parents raise hand if they still have more questions, and I can unmute you. Wait a second, somebody. Okay, my son thought life is easy, just like what he did last year on stock investment. So he lacks motivation, and he's in junior this year.
Okay.
Okay. So what's your question, Li Yi? So, and Guo Lin asked, my son has international award for piano, but is going apply for space engineering. Any chance to get into Ivy school?
Well, I think there's always a chance to get into any Ivy school. You know me. I mean, my thing's always been that he's an international piano. What does that have to do with space? That's the question. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a correlation. I'm asking just what. I'm asking what makes the connection. That's really the question. The other thing that I would ask is, like, an international piano award. That's fantastic, right? You know, I can relate because my cousins, which I heard about all the time when I was a kid because they were so good at music, but they trained so hard, was they went to Juilliard and Curtis. Okay, so I get it, but what I'm asking is that the International Piano Award, beyond himself, how did that benefit him, or how did it benefit the people around him? Did he do what in American did he speak? Did he do what we call the Billy Joel? Did he go into like a bar and put a glass on the piano and just start playing all different types of genres of piano to see if he could get people together and sing around the piano? Ever do something like that? That's the question I would ask. If he didn't do it and he did it just for himself, then I think maybe he should look at the reasons why he wants to be a space oriented type of profession versus being, you know, what he's good at, which seems like he's good at it, being a musician. So. And I think the other question was how to motivate him, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, well, I think motivation, as you said, it's like the stock market's been going up in a straight line. I would just say, I don't want to say the stock market's going to go down, but maybe we should just wait 3 to 6 months and see how he does, right? And then he'll learn, because the thing is that stock market cannot go up in a straight line. You could tell him that all day long, but it's one of these things where sometimes people have to experience it for themselves. It's not to say it's a bad thing that could happen. It's more that sometimes leaders can be very bullheaded too, just like Elon, right? Elon's not known to take everybody else's opinion because the guy's got 160 IQ functioning practical versus 160 IQ academic. That's a real 160 IQ. So there's very few people he's going to listen to, right? Maybe your son is one of those too. You just don't know. So we have to figure that out, right? What I would say is that you have to think about it from the standpoint of your son. It's like, why are you so confident, right? And can you teach me why? That might be something that'd be interesting or to explain it.
Okay, so somebody asked, do you also do college interviewer? I guess like they want to ask, do you help to train kids for college interview?
Absolutely. That's well, so how is it in our house? Basically, my wife does voluntary interviewing for our alma mater. So we have to have a Chinese wall between us, right? We can't talk about that kind of stuff because that's illegal. We can't affect each other. But in terms of anything intangible, if there's an interview process, we do make sure that they're 100% ready for that, because that's actually the final litmus test. That's like sort of third round at Goldman that you could think about. It's that basically you've made it past all the gates. They just want to verify you, right? So the interview is actually critical, but it comes along with the whole development process of how you create that sort of leadership potential and that confidence in a person, right? Everyone's going to react a little bit different personality-wise in an interview, but the whole idea is that you stand your ground, you know what you're talking about, and if you do that, people will respect you for it.
Okay, so I guess there's another similar question. Like my kid is sophomore and cannot seem to find something that he's passionate about, lack of motivation.
Yep.
What can I do to help her find something she wants to do? We got.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, you know, it's difficult to do it directly through like a parental basis, simply because they can see the how should you say, they can see the parental ambulance coming a mile away, you know, trying to help them, right? And they'll kind of rebel a little bit to that. So it depends on what your relationship with your daughter is. But what I would also do is like, you know, in those cases, I know that your daughter would respond to her peers too. So a lot of times I might host a, you know, like a party at the house with her daughter, with your daughter and all her friends. Then as, you know, as we're kind of just, you know, keeping the party going, right? Talk to them, find out what's going on, find out what it is that they like to do, get an interface for what that next generation is going after. And then you can actually link in at that same frequency with your daughter. And I'm almost guarantee you she will definitely respond to you for that, because she'll understand that you've been, you know, trying to understand her and trying to talk to her friends, trying to figure out what's cool.
Okay, so I mean, I guess we covered every question. So if anybody still want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. And I see Xu Jing嘛，您一直在举手. You raise your hand all the time. So I'm just wondering, do you have anything to ask, or it just an accident?
Sorry, it was an accident.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we pretty covered everything. And thank you, Frank, for such a fantastic webinar. 各位的话呢，您如果想要就是和 Frank 取得联系的话呢，您可以先扫码填写一个表格，这样子的话呢，我 Frank 可能也不会有 overwhelmed。And 如果呢您还没有进入到我们的思慧升学社群的话呢，您可以扫现在屏幕上的这一个小助手的二维码，然后回复升学，它会把你拉到我们的1、2、3、4的升学群里面。之后我们有更多的这个讲座的信息呢，我们就会继续的在群里面进行一个散发。好的，Okay, so can you put the form link here to contact Frank? Okay, wait a second, let me stop sharing. 好的，那个大家如果有更多的问题的话呢，可以在群里面提出哈。那个也特别的感谢我们的家长非常的热心哈，每一个周六都会守候在这里观看我们的这个不同主题的这一个思慧的 education 的 webinars. So Frank, you understand my Chinese? You get most of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so how young Frank take students, like 8th grade? Do you take students that young?
Yeah, so I haven't had a student that young before. Okay, that's fact. But I always tell people, like, it all depends on the student themselves. Because remember, like, I've had people as early as 9th or 10th grade. Okay. And believe it or not, the difference between 8th and 9th grade isn't that big of a deal. Depends on person, right? So I would always say, it's like, look, I'm always happy to talk to someone because even an 8th grader can teach me something. That's how I look at things. Okay. So the only thing I always stress with all of you is that when I talk about, bringing somebody aboard, right? It is because I want to make sure the fit, like my personality and your child's personality and you fits well. It doesn't work, in my opinion, without that, because it has to be very open, very honest, right? That way people start to trust each other, build relationship. That's what this is all about. So that's what I would tell you. It all dependent on child, and that's not a big deal. Like even if the child was 1st or 2nd grader, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is that we talk to them and see, like, oh, what do you like to do? And that's really what's interesting.
Okay, so 李仪，我看您举手了，最后一个问题给您吧，如果你有问题的话。
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand you. I think your cultural background, Frank. Thank you so much. And your background is a kind of like, because there's a lot of culture in Asian, in Chinese, and I think it should be kind of a Cantonese. Is that? Am I right?
No, actually, my parents are from Taiwan.
Sorry, because I feel that culture from that Cantonese and from Hong Kong. That yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends from Canton area. Okay, it's very hard to pin me down because I'm original.
Because their mindset's just like your style.
Is that right? Okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at it as being like I have taken bits and pieces from so many different cultures and disparate. So I've been very lucky to see that. But I'm a Detroit kid, actually. That's what I am. I'm brought up in the States, and just came from inner city.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sorry. My question is, I still don't understand how to motivate my son. He's so relaxing. He feel he might be feel life is so beautiful, life so easy. He just like go to vacation every day. He enjoying his breakfast, enjoying everything, enjoying play his golf, enjoying his meals. So he doesn't worry about his his ability and application. He's already junior. And study is it's just in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like the mentality everybody actually should learn.
Yeah.
This type of relaxed, take it easy mentality.
Yeah, I would just say, look, again, being relaxed is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you mentioned he plays golf. I mean, if he's a good player, that's something maybe that he wants to key in on. And one thing about it is like golf is a very tactical, mental sport.
Yeah, he's a kind. I think he's good. He's good player.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that you key in on what it is he likes about that. I would say maybe it's relaxing for him, but
actually he might not get the recognition from me, praise from me, but he can get the recognition from outside.
Yeah. So again, it's not to say that. Remember, like Stanford has Tiger Woods tees, like they show where the
oh, he's not good as Tiger Woods, far from that.
Well, I mean, everything is relative. What I always say is that you should always think about it from the standpoint of what he likes to do. And yeah, he might be very relaxed in nature. Doesn't necessarily have to be so gung-ho, but that, again, that's personality fit. So I would just say from my side, yeah, it might be a little bit too relaxed for somebody like myself, but that's not a big deal. That's not wrong. I would just say that he has to be if he's good at something, there has to be a reason why, right? Instead of just sleeping, let's say. I mean, I've heard people say, like, what are you good at? Oh, I'm good at eating. Right? I look good at eating. And it's like, okay, it's got to be more than that, right? So ways to get around that is to sort of have a good network of friends with, maybe kids around that same age that are doing different things. They don't have to be intense, but they have to be doing different things so that your son gets perspective. But in your case, it seems to me like he's already good at something. So maybe key in on those and try to figure out what that is that makes him good.
For me, he's good at nothing. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know. What I'm saying is that you said he plays pretty good golf. And so if that's the case, I don't know what his scores are. Okay. But I think what it is that sometimes
just around 5 or 4 handicap. It's not that good.
It's good enough for a lot of college programs, So that's all I'm saying is that, okay, so there's 5 or 4 handicap, right? But if he loves to play, right, and he wants to sort of pursue some of that as sort of a way to get in on sports scholarship, then yeah, that's a possibility. You just have to work for it. You have to grind a little bit. And, that handicap will come down. If he comes down to scratch, then there's going to be a whole bunch of people that probably want to talk to him. So then the next question would be to talk to the coaches and, try to get an idea, talk to the team, see how he comes along.
He thinks, I think even though he can get to a good college, he still can invest on the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
He thought this investment, it might be so easy as last year. You can still win. No.
That's a standard theme of a lot of people. But again, I think what it is that it's very difficult to change a child's mind like that. It usually has to come from experience or come from somebody that they respect, right? So, unfortunately, it's very difficult many times for a parent themselves to do it alone, right? Because like I said, you're the voice that they hear all the time. It's not that anything that I do is special. It's just that I'm a different voice. I talk differently, and I have a different way about doing things, right? And that just helps with the contrast. It's just perspective. So I would encourage you to find, again, contacts in your area, friends in your area for the particular things you want to do, and try to focus on that and see if you can get a different perspective for your son.
Okay, so the next question. Okay, so, and it will be the question end for tonight. If you work with a student, how often do you talk with students to provide guidance?
Yeah, custom approach, right? So again, I've had things where we're doing 4 days a week. Like right now we're doing 4 days a week, 2 hours a day with that particular. Okay, so it is a lot of time. But at the same time, there are cases where, they're a longer run. And if they're a longer run, then it would be, I generally don't say anything less than a couple hours a month. If it's, let's say you're starting from like a 9th grade level, because less than an hour a month or something like that, they don't even remember you. There's too many things going on, right? You want to at least bi-weekly, let's say, to do something like that. That's what I found experiential. So again, I don't believe half an hour things work. That's too short. Sometimes there's a lot of, when I ask about activities or what they're doing, it takes some time. So I think, hour blocks are good, like twice a month. So it'd probably be, 20 to 25 hours a year for a long run thing. And then accelerated is like whatever you need. It's like all hands on deck if the fit is good.
Okay, so I think that's the end for tonight. And thank you very much, Frank. And yeah, I mean, like in the future, we will invite you back and just give more opinions about how to motivate kids. I think that's a huge topic over there. Yeah. So 感谢各位家长。如果还有个说有个人问到how much does Frank charge per hour？你可以扫那个码，你可以就是说填那个表，然后我这边会和您联系。然后呢，这样子的话呢，如果您有兴趣的话呢 ，Frank 这边会来和你来进行一个对接。好的，行，感谢 Frank 今天的光临，也感谢各位家长。Happy weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
OK，拜拜，